The Seattle skyline glittered like a promise I'd never been allowed to claim. Rain streaked my windshield as I pulled into the lot 2 blocks from the waterfront venue, the kind of place you'd see in a glossy magazine spread, crystal chandeliers, imported orchids, and a view of Puget Sound that screamed money. My brother Ethan's wedding was a spectacle, a Thornton family production meant to dazzle. I adjusted my rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of myself in the emerald dress I'd snagged off a clearance rack at Nordstrom. It hugged my frame well enough, but it wasn't the kind of gown that screamed family. It whispered afterthought. I didn't belong here. Not really, but I'd shown up anyway, because that's what I did. I showed up. I stepped out into the drizzle, my heels clicking against wet asphalt. The air smelled of salt and expensive perfume, carried from the venue by a breeze that tugged at my hair. I'd parked far enough to avoid the valet's pitying glance, the one reserved for guests who didn't quite fit the Thornton mold. My family didn't host events like this. We were the ones who made them happen. Caterers, fixers, the invisible hands. Tonight I was no different. I clutched my purse, the weight of it grounding me as I walked past manicured hedges and rows of white orchids lining the stone path. Each step felt like a rehearsal for a role I'd played my whole life, the reliable sister, the one who never complained. Inside, the venue buzzed with controlled chaos. Florists fussed over centerpieces, their hands darting like hummingbirds. A man balanced on a ladder, wrestling with a flickering chandelier bulb that refused to stay lit. My sister Olivia stood by a gilded mirror, her ivory silk dress catching the light like she was born to wear it. She didn't look up when she spoke, her voice sharp and casual. "Emma, thank God you're here. Can you grab Mom's purse from the car? She doesn't want it cluttering the bridal suite." No hello, no smile. Just a command like I was the hired help. I nodded, swallowing the familiar sting. "Sure," I said, my voice steady though something bitter coiled in my chest. The purse was tucked under a makeup station half hidden by a glittering clutch and a champagne flute with a lipstick stain. I grabbed it, the leather cool against my palm, and headed back to the parking lot. The rain had picked up, soaking my dress where it clung to my thighs. Seattle's spring was relentless, a reminder that nothing here ever stayed soft for long. As I reached Mom's car, a sharp crack echoed from the venue behind me. My head snapped up. A fire alarm blared, shrill and insistent, cutting through the hum of pre-wedding chatter. My heart lurched. I fumbled with the car keys, the purse slipping from my grip as I sprinted back toward the entrance. Guests spilled out, their faces a mix of annoyance and confusion, while staff shouted over the noise, directing everyone to the lawn. I pushed through the crowd, my pulse hammering. Was it a real fire? A drill? I reached the side door where a caterer was waving people out, but the handle was scalding hot. I yanked my hand back, cursing under my breath. Smoke curled faintly from a storage room down the hall, and for a moment I was trapped. Door locked behind me, heat rising, the alarm screaming in my ears. I banged on the door, my knuckles stinging, until a maintenance worker yanked it open, his face flushed. "Get out, now!" he barked. I stumbled into the rain, my dress clinging to my skin, my breath ragged. The alarm cut off as quickly as it started, a false alarm triggered by a faulty wire in the storage room. No fire, just chaos. My hands shook as I brushed wet hair from my face, the crowd murmuring around me. Olivia caught my eye from across the lawn, her expression unreadable. "You okay?" she called, but her tone was perfunctory, like she'd already moved on. I nodded, forcing a smile. I was okay. That was the deal. Back inside, the chaos settled, but the air felt heavier, charged. I barely made it past the door before a bridesmaid I didn't know thrust a stack of garment bags into my arms. "Hey, Emma, can you hold these for a sec?" Her smile was bright, oblivious, like I was just part of the scenery. I took the bags, their weight pulling at my shoulders, the faint scent of hairspray and satin filling my nose. Done this 1,000 times. Held things, fixed things, faded into the background. But tonight, in this dress, with the memory of that scalding door handle still burning in my palm, it felt different, sharper. I was setting the bags down when the photographer's voice cut through the hum. "All right, family shots now. Bridal party first." The room shifted, guests clustering into formations like a choreographed dance. I stood frozen, unsure where I fit. Olivia's voice floated over, laced with amusement. "Emma, can you step aside? You're in the shot." Her smile was tight, her eyes cold. I moved, my cheeks burning, the weight of every unacknowledged favor I'd ever done for this family pressing against my ribs. Then came the moment that broke something inside me. My mother, Eleanor, approached, her pearl necklace gleaming against her tailored dress. She held out a small white sticker, her lips pursed in that familiar way that said she was already done with this conversation. "Here," she said, pressing it into my hand, "so people know you're not with the staff." The word hit like a slap. Silence stretched between us, not the quiet kind, but the kind that screams. Then Sophia, Ethan's fiancée, giggled, pointing toward the security gate outside. "Well, someone's got to watch the gate, right?" Laughter rippled through the bridal party, sharp and careless, like I was the punchline to a joke they'd been telling for years. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I peeled the sticker from its backing and pressed it onto my dress, right over my heart, the adhesive cold against my skin. Then I walked to the gate, my heels sinking into the wet grass, the rain still dripping down my neck. The security post was a small booth, exposed to the elements, with a flickering light overhead that buzzed like a dying insect. I stood there, alone, the city's hum distant, the laughter from the venue faint but cutting. A stray dog nosed around the gate, its fur matted from the rain. I crouched down, scratching its ears, feeling more kinship with it than with the family inside. Then it happened again, a spark, this time from the booth's electrical panel. A sharp pop, and the light above me flickered out, plunging the gate into shadow. My heart raced as I backed away, the smell of burnt wiring sharp in the air. I fumbled for my phone, its light casting long shadows as I checked the panel. A loose wire, sparking dangerously. Inches from my hand, I stepped back, my breath shallow, and called the venue's maintenance line. "It's fine," the guy on the other end said. "Bored, we'll send someone." But no one came. I stood there, rain-soaked, the staff badge curling at the edges, my dress ruined, my dignity fraying. I thought about the last decade, Thanksgivings where I cooked while Olivia posted Instagram stories about family time, Christmases where I fixed Mom's Wi-Fi while Ethan got praise for a store-bought pie, the time I used my savings to cover Dad's car repair, only for him to thank Olivia for always being there. I was the one who showed up, who fixed things, who stayed quiet, and now I was standing in the rain guarding a gate no one cared about, wearing a badge that erased me. Something snapped, not loud, not dramatic, but a quiet fracture, like a bone finally giving way. I walked back inside, ignoring the stairs, and headed to the coat room. Another near miss waited for me there. A heavy chandelier bulb, loosened by the earlier chaos, slipped from its socket as I passed. I dodged it by inches, the glass shattering on the marble floor, shards glinting like tiny knives. My pulse pounded, but I didn't stop. I grabbed my coat, peeled off the staff badge, and folded it carefully, slipping it into my purse like a piece of evidence. Then I walked out, past the glowing venue, past the valet who didn't look twice, and into the Seattle night. My apartment was a small studio in Capitol Hill, the kind of place you'd miss if you weren't looking. The rain had followed me home, streaking the windows as I kicked off my heels. They landed crooked by the door, mud-streaked and useless. I didn't change out of my dress, the emerald fabric clinging to me like a second skin. I grabbed a sandwich from a corner deli on the way home, but it sat untouched on the table, the bread soggy, the lettuce wilting. The room was quiet except for the hum of a faulty light bulb overhead, flickering like it was mocking me. I'd meant to fix it for months. Tonight, I didn't care. I pulled my laptop from the shelf, the glow of the screen cutting through the dimness. I opened the wedding website, ethansophia2025.com, the one I'd built months ago when Mom bragged about my tech skills to Sophia. They'd never asked about it again, never checked the admin access, never thought to question the invisible sister who made it all work. I clicked into the back end, my fingers steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. There, in a hidden folder labeled Unseen Moments, I uploaded a photo I'd taken last week, a grainy shot from a public parking lot showing Ethan's car, his license plate, and a woman who wasn't Sophia, her hand on his arm. It wasn't much, but it was a start. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Emma, where did you go?" That was immature. Another. "You upset Sophia. This isn't the time for your dramatics." A third. "Are you okay?" No apology. No acknowledgement of the badge, the gate, the years I'd spent carrying their weight. I turned the phone face down and kept working. I uploaded more photos to the folder. Me, fixing Olivia's laptop at 2 a.m. while she slept. Me hauling decorations for Ethan's engagement party while he posed for photos. Me alone at the family cabin, cleaning up after their weekend getaway. No captions, just images, raw and unfiltered, a silent rebuke to their curated perfection. I set the folder to go live at 9 a.m. tomorrow, buried deep enough that only the curious would find it, like a landmine under their polished facade. My heart pounded, but not with fear. It was something else, something sharp and alive. I leaned back, the dress still damp against my skin, and stared at the staff badge on the table. Its edges curled in the dim light, the words staring back at me like a challenge. I taped it to my monitor, a reminder, a flag. Then, another danger. My laptop screen flickered, a warning of a potential hack attempt. Someone was trying to access the website's admin panel. My pulse spiked as I traced the IP local. Too close. I strengthened the firewall, my fingers flying over the keys, blocking the intrusion just in time. Whoever it was, they knew I had control. They knew I was a threat. I opened my email, ignoring the family texts piling up. There, at the top, was a message from Professor Elaine Carter, my old mentor from the University of Washington. Subject: lead software engineer role. Her note was brief. Contact at a Seattle startup needs someone with your full sector and AI skills. Interested? I stared at the words, my chest tightening. Not with doubt, but with possibility. I marked it unread, not because I wasn't interested, but because I wanted to hold on to the feeling a little longer. The feeling of being seen, of being wanted, of being more than a Thornton afterthought. The rain had stopped, leaving the city quiet, the streetlights casting long shadows through my blinds. I stood, stretching muscles stiff from tension, from dodging sparks and shattering glass, from carrying the weight of a family that didn't see me. My phone buzzed again, but I didn't look. I didn't need to. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for their approval. I was writing my own story. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my phone vibrating against the table. The analytics dashboard on my laptop was alive, numbers ticking up like a heartbeat. The website was blowing up, hits from Seattle, Portland, even San Francisco. The Unseen Moments folder had been found, shared, dissected. My phone pinged again. "Olivia? Emma, what the hell? Did you mess with the site?" Then Ethan. "These pictures are a joke, right? Take them down." I didn't reply. I sipped my coffee, cold from sitting out all night, and watched the numbers climb. A group chat labeled Thornton Core lit up, silent since the reception ended. Now it was chaos. Aunt Clara, is that badge real? Uncle Mark, why was Emma cleaning up during the toasts? Sophia's mother, who let her control the website? That's a liability. It was like watching a house of cards tremble. I refreshed the page. A new comment appeared under the staff badge photo. Real family doesn't label you a servant and pose for photos without you. It had 62 likes in 2 hours. I leaned back, my chest lighter than it had been in years. They hadn't seen me coming, but they saw me now. Then, the fifth danger, a knock at my door, sharp and deliberate. My heart stopped. I approached slowly, peering through the peephole. No one. Just a manila envelope taped to the door, my name scrawled in black ink. I grabbed it, my hands trembling, and locked the door behind me. Inside was a single page, a notarized document, dated 6 months ago, revoking my status as a beneficiary of the Thornton Family Trust. Signatures stared back at me. Mom's elegant cursive, Dad's tight script, Olivia's flourish, Ethan's scrawl. My name was nowhere. Tucked behind it, a handwritten note. No signature. You deserve to know what they were planning. I couldn't stay silent. I sank into a chair, the envelope heavy in my lap. This wasn't just a wedding slight. This was erasure, calculated and cold. My family had rewritten me out of their legacy while I was still showing up, still hoping. The room spun, the weight of it crushing. But beneath the hurt, something else stirred. Anger, yes, but also clarity. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was a threat, and I wasn't done. I stood, the envelope still in hand, and walked to my laptop. The Unseen Moments folder was just the beginning. I opened a new file, naming it Reckoning. The word felt right, like a vow I'd made to myself long ago, but only now understood. Outside, Seattle woke up, the city's pulse steady against the quiet of my apartment. I wasn't the sister who fixed things anymore. I was the one who'd break them open. The Seattle dawn broke gray and heavy, the kind of morning that felt like it was holding its breath. I sat at my kitchen table, the manila envelope still open in front of me, its contents spread like a crime scene, the notarized trust revocation, the anonymous note, the signatures that carved me out of my own family. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, but I hadn't moved. The laptop screen glowed, the Reckoning folder open, a digital war room where I'd begun collecting fragments of truth. The staff badge was still taped to my monitor, its edges curling like a wound that wouldn't heal. My phone buzzed relentlessly. Texts from Olivia, Ethan, even Mom, their words a mix of panic and blame. I didn't read them. Not yet. I was done reacting. Today, I would act. The anonymous note haunted me. You deserve to know what they were planning. I couldn't stay silent. Who had sent it? Someone close enough to know the family's secrets, bold enough to betray them, but too scared to sign their name. My mind raced, landing on names. Cousins, family friends, maybe even Sophia's assistant, who'd always lingered a little too long when I fixed her laptop. I pushed the thought aside. Speculation wouldn't help, evidence would. I opened my email and found the message from Professor Elaine Carter again, the one about the lead software engineer role. This time, I replied, "Interested. Can we discuss details today?" I hit send, my heart pounding with a mix of defiance and hope. The Thorntons had tried to erase me, but I wasn't invisible, not anymore. I stood, stretching muscles stiff from hours of sitting, and grabbed my keys. I needed air, clarity, and a plan. But as I reached for the door, another danger struck, a sharp crack from the window behind me. I spun around, my pulse spiking. A brick lay on the floor, surrounded by shattered glass, rain seeping through the jagged hole. Scrawled across it in red marker, "Stop." My breath caught. Someone knew I was digging. Someone was watching. I grabbed a broom, sweeping the glass with trembling hands, my mind racing. Was this Ethan? Olivia? Or someone higher up, someone with more to lose? I checked the security camera I'd installed last year after a string of neighborhood break-ins. The footage was grainy, but it showed a figure in a hooded jacket, face obscured, tossing the brick before vanishing into the alley. No license plate, no clear features. I saved the clip, my stomach twisting. This wasn't just a family feud anymore. This was a warning. I called my building manager, reported the incident, and taped a plastic sheet over the window. The cold air still leaked through, a reminder that safety was no longer guaranteed. I drove to a coffee shop in Fremont, a quiet spot tucked between a record store and a yoga studio, its walls lined with mismatched bookshelves and the faint smell of espresso. I ordered an iced latte, nodded to the barista who barely glanced up, and slid into a corner booth. The manila envelope sat heavy in my bag, but I pulled out my laptop first. I needed to verify the trust documents to see how deep this went. I searched for David Waller, the attorney listed on the revocation. The third result stopped me cold. A photo from a Seattle charity gala 2 years ago, Waller smiling next to Sophia, her arm looped casually through his. They knew each other. She had connections, influence, access. My hands shook as I clicked deeper, finding Waller's firm tied to Sophia's nonprofit, the Thornton Legacy Fund. This wasn't just a family decision, it was a calculated move, orchestrated by someone who knew how to pull strings. I opened the trust documents again, scanning line by line. The clause, removing me as a beneficiary, cited irreconcilable divergence from family interests. The words burned. I'd worked since college, paid my own way, built a life outside their world of country clubs and gala dinners. My crime? Choosing to teach coding to high school kids instead of chasing their version of success. I leaned back, the latte untouched, my mind replaying every slight, every dismissal. The time I'd spent my bonus to cover Mom's medical bill, only for her to thank Olivia for always being thoughtful. The weekends I'd spent troubleshooting Ethan's startup website while he took credit at board meetings. I'd been their fixer, their shadow, and they'd thanked me by erasing me. My phone buzzed again. A call from an unknown number. I let it ring, my nerves frayed from the brick incident. It went to voicemail, and a voice I didn't recognize filled the silence. "Emma, you're stirring things up. Be careful. Meet me at Pike Place by the fish market, 3 p.m. Come alone." The line went dead. My heart pounded. Another threat? Or an ally? I couldn't tell, but the urgency in the voice gnawed at me. I glanced at the clock. 1:45 p.m. I had just over an hour to decide. I packed up, my movements quick but deliberate, and headed out. The rain had stopped, leaving the city slick and gleaming, but the air felt heavier, like it was waiting for something to break. Pike Place was crowded, tourists snapping photos of flying fish, vendors shouting over the hum of conversation. I stood by the market's edge, my coat pulled tight against the chill, scanning for anyone who looked out of place. At 3:02, a woman approached, her face half hidden by a scarf. I recognized her eyes. Clara, my cousin, who'd always been on the fringes of the Thornton circle. She didn't smile, didn't hug me. "I sent the envelope," she said, her voice low. "I heard Sophia and Ethan talking at the wedding. They didn't know I was there. They said you were a liability, that the trust had to be cleaned up before the gala." My chest tightened. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. Clara looked away, her hands twisting the scarf. "I was scared. They're powerful, Emma. You know that." She handed me a folded piece of paper, yellowed and creased, from Sophia's bachelorette weekend. Scribbled in hurried ink were words that made my blood run cold. Restructured trust, optics, beneficiary control, dated 4 days before the wedding. I overheard them at the bar, Clara whispered. Sophia said your teacher lifestyle didn't fit their image. Ethan agreed, said it was already done. I folded the note, my hands steadied despite the rage building inside me. Thank you, I said, meaning it. But why now? Clara's eyes met mine, raw and unguarded. Because I saw you at the wedding with that badge, sitting there like they'd buried you. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Before I could respond, a shout cut through the market. A vendor's cart tipped over, crates of fish crashing to the ground, the crowd scattering. I grabbed Clara's arm, pulling her back as a man in a dark jacket barreled through, his shoulder slamming into mine. Pain shot through my arm, but I held tight to the note, my eyes locked on the man's retreating figure. Was he following us? Clara's face paled. Go, she hissed. Don't come back here. I nodded, slipping the note into my pocket and weaving through the crowd, my heart racing. The market's chaos swallowed me, but I felt eyes on my back, real or imagined. Back at my apartment, the plastic sheet over the broken window rattled in the wind. I locked the door, checked the deadbolt twice, and spread Clara's note on the table next to the trust documents. Each piece was a bone, forming a skeleton of betrayal. I opened my laptop, the reckoning folder growing heavier with every upload. Clara's note, screenshots of Sophia's gala posts, the trust revocation. I needed more. I pulled up the Thornton Legacy Fund's IRS filings, my coding skills kicking in as I dug through public records. The numbers didn't add up. $52,000, 0 cents in consulting fees with no vendor names, a gala expense line missing receipts. Then I found it, an IRS notice of review dated a week ago, citing potential charitable misrepresentation. My pulse quickened. This was the crack I needed. Another danger loomed as I worked. My laptop froze, a pop-up warning of a malware attack. Someone was trying to wipe my drive. I yanked the power cord, switched to a backup tablet, and ran a diagnostic. The attack was targeted, sophisticated, coming from an IP I couldn't trace. I restored my files from a cloud backup, my hands shaking, but the message was clear. They knew I was digging, and they were fighting back. I strengthened my encryption, my resolve hardening. They'd underestimated me for years. Not anymore. I drove to the King County Courthouse, the rain starting again, drumming against my windshield. The clerk, an older woman with sharp eyes, recognized the Thornton name. You folks have been busy, she said, handing me a file on the trust. No new amendments, but her comment lingered. Busy. What else were they hiding? I thanked her and left, the file tucked under my arm. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. Another unknown number. I ignored it, but the voicemail was waiting. Emma, stop digging. You don't know what you're up against. The voice was distorted, mechanical, chilling. I saved it, my hands clammy, and drove to meet James, my old college friend and lawyer, at his office near the university. James's office was a small red brick space, cluttered with legal books and framed diplomas. He stood when I entered, his graying temples catching the light, his eyes kind but serious. I checked the documents, he said, sliding a folder across the table. They're real. Your name was removed from the trust last October. No notification, no signature required from you. I nodded, my throat tight. There's more, he continued, pulling out a second file. Your grandmother set up a secondary fund for you. $180,000, 0 cents, for education and a home. It was dissolved 2 months after she died, reabsorbed into Sophia's nonprofit. My vision blurred. That fund was Nana's promise, her way of saying I mattered. They'd stolen it, redirected it to their polished legacy. James handed me one last document, a draft letter from Sophia to Nana's attorney, dated weeks before her death. It read, "Restructure inheritance to align with Thornton values, avoiding disbursements that dilute the family brand." I dropped the paper, my stomach churning. They'd tried to rewrite Nana's will while she was still alive, dismissing my life as a teacher as unworthy. I looked at James. "Can I fight this?" His answer was firm. "Yes, the secondary fund was in your name. This letter shows intent to manipulate. And that anonymous envelope? Someone's on your side." I left his office, the files heavy in my bag, and parked near the library to text Sarah, my cousin who'd drifted from the family years ago. Her baby shower last year had been our last real talk, her hug lingering like she wanted to say more. I kept it short. "Need to talk, off the record. Can you meet?" Her reply was instant. "Rooftop Cafe, Belltown, 1 hour. Alone." I drove home first, changing into jeans and a sweater, blending into the city's gray. Couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, the distorted voicemail echoing in my mind. The cafe was quiet, its rooftop view framed by Seattle's skyline, the Space Needle piercing the clouds. Sarah sat in a corner, stirring her tea, her dark hair pulled back, her eyes heavy with something unspoken. "I didn't know they'd go this far," she said as I sat down. "I overheard Sophia and Ethan at the wedding, planning to cut you out. I sent the envelope." She slid a hotel notepad across the table, scribbled with words that matched Clara's. "Trust optics, beneficiary control." "They said your life didn't photograph well," Sarah continued, her voice breaking. "I should have told you sooner, but I was scared. They've got people everywhere." I nodded, my anger tempered by her honesty. "You're here now," I said. "That's enough." A sudden crash interrupted us. A waiter dropped a tray, glass shattering across the deck. Instinctively, I pulled Sarah down, my heart racing, expecting something worse. The cafe staff apologized, blaming a clumsy employee, but the timing felt off. Sarah's eyes widened. "They know I talked," she whispered. "Go, Emma. Don't trust anyone." I slipped the note into my pocket and left, my steps quick. The city's hum, now a threat. Back home, I added Sarah's note to the reckoning folder, my resolve stealing. They'd tried to silence me, but I was louder now, in ways they couldn't predict. Days later, I learned Sophia was launching the Thornton Women's Legacy Gala using Nana's name for her nonprofit. The audacity burned. I spent nights building a timeline, cross-referencing IRS filings, highlighting discrepancies, a $48,000 0-cents outreach expense, with no receipts, donor names repeated across years with mismatched totals. The IRS notice was my leverage, but I needed more. I contacted Rachel Lee, a Seattle Times journalist who'd once covered the Thorntons' philanthropy. My email was simple. "The Thornton Legacy Fund has cracks. Want to look?" I attached a single screenshot, an email from Sophia to an unknown contact. "Optics need to hold through the gala." The night of the gala arrived, and I dressed in a black satin gown bought on impulse last year, now my armor. I'd borrowed James's Lincoln, the valet barely glancing at me as I stepped onto the red carpet at the Chihuly Garden and Glass. The venue was a masterpiece of glowing sculptures and dim lights, the air thick with bourbon and ambition. Sophia stood at the entrance, her emerald gown catching every eye, but when she saw me, her smile faltered. "You weren't invited," she murmured. "I don't need an invitation," I replied, my voice calm. "This city doesn't belong to you." I moved through the crowd, my presence a quiet disruption. Whispers followed, some curious, some uneasy. A woman in pearls approached. "Emma Thornton." "I didn't expect you." I smiled, unbothered. Neither did they. At 8:06, the lights dimmed, and Sophia took the stage, her voice polished, preaching integrity and legacy. I stood by a glass sculpture, its curves catching the light like a warning. Then it happened. Phones buzzed, screens lit up, a Times article dropped, Thornton legacy or family fraud. It cited whistleblower reports, IRS reviews, and my name as the source. The room crackled with tension, guests whispering, some leaving. Sophia's grip on the podium tightened, her voice thinning as she pushed through her speech. I didn't stay. I walked out, the cool night air a relief, my heels clicking against the stone. The next morning, my phone was flooded. 412 messages. A missed call from Dad, no voicemail. I didn't call back. Headlines spread from Seattle to New York, the Thorntons' polished image unraveling. Sophia resigned from the nonprofit, citing personal reasons, but the truth was louder. A week later, a courier delivered a legal notice. I'd inherited Nana's house on Vashon Island, the one Sophia had claimed. I drove there, the ferry ride quiet, the house waiting, wild with ivy, but mine. I rolled up my sleeves, cleaning, reclaiming, making it home. Ethan showed up unannounced, a paper bag of sandwiches in hand. I read the article, he said, his voice raw. I should have stopped her. I nodded, letting him help me clean, no apologies needed yet. We worked in silence, rebuilding something small, something real. At a housewarming weeks later, with friends and neighbors, I stood on the porch, the Puget Sound stretching before me. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was whole.